So here's the biggest distinction for us. This is, first of all, it's not 2015. The majority of our kids don't feel like this is their issue. They're not protesting. They're not doing anything. They're still in the neighborhoods trapping. They're still in the neighborhoods doing the same stuff that they were doing before the protests. Again, 2015 happened in the hood. It happened in the project. So that was their fight, their battle. Now, 2019, you're talking about protests going on downtown in front of City Hall. Our kids don't feel comfortable going in front of City Hall on a good day. So they daggone sure not going down there to protest and put themselves in the middle of all that. The other thing, too, is that the rest of the world views this and understands what happened as police brutality. Our kids don't. That happens to them all the time. The difference is they might not have died from it. So a police putting their knee in his neck, that's nothing new to them. You know, we didn't see that happen to a bunch of our homeboys and friends a billion times over. For them, they don't process it as police brutality. So a lot of them don't even understand what people are up in arms about, other than the fact that the man died. But if we remember the Freddie Gray situation, Freddie Gray's incident was way worse than that. But people saw it. People in the neighborhood visually saw the interaction between him and the police. They saw the police chasing him. They saw all of it actually happen, which led up to his death. They saw it firsthand. So they rioted in their neighborhood because that was personal. For they knew Freddie, so it was a thing for them in their neighborhood. Right now, George Floyd, I mean, he's just another black man who got killed by the police to them. And again, that's not something new to us. That's not something that going to cause us to protest. I mean, it happens all the time. We see police mistreatment all the time in our communities. The thing that we have to do is take the opportunity to help the young men understand why this is wrong and why on a larger scale they should be concerned about it and they should care about it. But again, you got to remember what's actually going on in Baltimore. We had 5 or 6 shootings yesterday and a couple of homicides. We still got real violence issues to worry about where we can't focus our attention on protests that kids feel detached to, and we can't focus our attention on a pandemic that hasn't slowed down the violence. It won't slow down the violence, and the violence is going to continue through it all. You know, we got to really remain focused on working with our young people and making sure that we're getting them the proper messaging, not only around this whole George Floyd thing, but around the coronavirus and all the same type of stuff. The point is that the circumstances for our young people have not changed. Circumstances of the neighborhoods are still the same. And while the rest of the country is going crazy over an incident that happened in another city or state, our young people are still living in the same mess that they've been living in from before. And they're going to be in that mess long after the protests end. They're going to be in that mess as long as we don't continue to do this work to help get them out of it. The past couple of days since this has been happening, it hasn't changed the focus for us because our young people aren't involved. I can honestly tell you, I don't think that any of my young people in my program have gone downtown because that's just not for them. We talk about youth-led marches and all these things that have been happening. Yeah, but those are more progressive youth. Those aren't our kids. Those aren't the youth that this stuff affects. A lot of that stuff going on, like they really say, is a really bunch of outsiders. Or really a bunch of people who may be a little more progressive than our young people. But those kids are involved in clubs and groups, and our kids not. The only club or group they involved in is the one on their street corner. You know, and that's a club or group that's not going nowhere, no matter what's going on around them. So they have to continue to fight through all these things that are so normalized for them that we know are unnormal because we're healthy. We have healthy minds, and even this whole situation around the George Floyd thing, you know, it's traumatizing even to us, because what it made me realize was that I could be a law-abiding black man, and that could happen to me. I am a law-abiding black man, and that same scenario could happen to me, you know, just because of the color of my skin. Now think about the young people who we service who are in that population. They have to think about that. Not only do you have to think about that, that's the reality that they live every day. You know what I mean? Now, a George Floyd or Freddie Gray, it won't happen in Baltimore again, more than likely because of everything that came from it and all the attention and the backlash. But here's the thing. The people in Penn North, they will never do that again because they realized that they burned their own neighborhood down and they got all these promises of getting it fixed and it still look the same as 2015. And they got all these empty promises, all these broken promises. So they're not going to do the same thing to their own neighborhood because they're still suffering from the results of what they did 5 years ago. And nobody wants to go through that again. It's different for us. It's more like our kids are more vigilant to the fact, like, man, we're not doing that again. It was downtown Saturday night when it was the disruption between the police and that group of agitators, and it was a lot of young kids, but they weren't our kids. And I was looking like, these kids don't even look like they belong down here. They look like they just came down here to start a bunch bunch of shit. And that's basically what it was. But they wasn't our kids, you know? So it's been business as usual for us as far as the ground, because the violence is on an uptick here in Baltimore. It's not going down nowhere. And, you know, we know that there's situations out there that are lingering that we could be seeing some historic numbers really soon around this violent stuff if we don't get a control of what's happening with our young people. We got a lot of work to do, and we can't lose focus on what the real issues are or what our young people are really facing out here, because we're going to lose this battle if we don't. We've been seeing a lot of the same stuff we've been seeing before, and we just got to continue to stay focused on it. The biggest takeaway here is that I really want people to understand the disconnect. I want people to understand the disconnect of what's going on nationally with George Floyd and how that's disconnected from our communities. How it's disconnected from kids who are most likely to suffer that fate. Because they don't view it that way, because they view it as normal, it's really important for us to somehow be able to highlight, like, look, these protests are great because it is an injustice and people do need to stand up for this. But there is also a huge disconnect here. You know what I saw when I saw the protest? I saw another sign of two Baltimores. 3 different Baltimores that people just wholly oblivious to, because they think that because they're protesting and they're down there, that they're the ones who are affected by it. No. I saw 2 totally different Baltimore with the protest, because I'm in the neighborhood with my kids who are still standing out there trying to survive and live day to day. And then you got protesters lining up, start marching from their neighborhood. You know, you lining up in the projects, but none of them kids marching down there with y'all. Who's reaching out to them and giving them the education around what the purpose of this is? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a bunch of dog and pony shows. And I'm not for the dog and pony shows. It's about the real work. Real work's got to be done. So we've had enough injustice on our streets for too long where we don't need a protest to help us realize what's been wrong. I don't know why it keeps taking the death of black men to hit national news for people to get in uproar. But we need to be in the same uproar, the same rage about the community violence that's happening on our own streets and our own neighborhoods, about our young men that are continuing to die, because they're the ones who are not getting the proper education around any of this stuff.